The brand is what people talk about you behind your back. Unacademy की marketing team आके मेरे को पूछी कि तूने कैसा बना है, मतलब unless something becomes a massive pain point, people don't solve it with food. Like for example, when COVID became pain point, you saw suddenly like what vaccine used to take like 10-20 years, we got it inside 1 year. I don't believe engineer is someone who simply solves a problem. What if you solve a problem and that is not a reusable solution? You will have imposter syndrome. You will think कि सही जगह पे नहीं हूँ, इतना आता नहीं है, and that is a good part and the bad part depending on how you take it.
That what should be an ideal relationship between a product manager and engineer? How should that work?
And first interaction with PM सीधा CAC क्या है, LTV, this that, नहीं पता. Indian mindset में most of the people have external locus of identity. मेरा अच्छा नहीं हुआ क्योंकि education system अच्छा है. मेरा अच्छा नहीं हुआ क्योंकि माँ बाप ने जबरदस्ती ये फील्ड में डाला. Hard work is a scalar quantity. लगाते जाओ, लगाते जाओ, लगाते जाओ. It does not matter. You need to give it the right direction.
And I think the first thing that I noticed in our conversations was the very similarity of things that we talked about, which was kind of rare because I used to meet a lot of people and he obviously himself, and kahin na kahin wo sync bahut mushkil se baithta hai, and he's someone who's extremely creative, takes risks, and someone who I duly look up to from an engineering side. But let me kind of do a basic intro of who he is, right? I think he has spent considerable time in very good companies, very good product culture companies, at least how they are spoken about, right? Which is he spent considerable time in Practo, in Amazon, then significant time in Unacademy, where he became very quickly rose to become the director of engineering. And then the most recent role that he was a staff software engineer at Google, which coincidentally, I don't know what he did, but he resigned like some time back, which is like another funny thing. So if you want to ask questions over there, but deep down, I would say that if I have to describe him someone, I think he's the model fit of an engineer that you think of. I think that is what Mr. Arpit Vyani is. So dude, thank you very much for coming in. I think this is super lovely and super honored that I am doing this conversation. Awesome.
थोड़ा ज़्यादा हो गया, but सही. Thanks so much, Raman. Means it.
Cool, yeah. Cool. So what I would want to do is I really want to start this conversation, and I've told you the structure, right? मैं पहले 30 मिनट हम बात करेंगे, and after the 30 minutes there will be people who will start asking you questions, right? About, and generally उन्होंने आपकी प्रोफाइल देख ली होगी, तो they will ask you very good questions, I'm assuming, and that at least that's what the last judges said. ठीक है? तो fair enough. तो मैं सबसे पहले यार एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग चीज बताना चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि ये सारे लोग प्रोडक्ट मैनेजर बनना चाहते हैं. One of the very interesting thing that I always thought of was that what is the mindset of an ideal engineer, and how does he contribute to this? A person coming giving very abstract requirements saying ये बनाना है, but doesn't understand the integrities of a tech system, how it gets built, right? तो वो ideal mindset क्या होता है कि जहाँ पे ये collaboration बहुत अच्छे से काम करती है. And since you have worked in like different culture companies, what is that? So what is that? कहते हैं ना 10x engineer, वो क्या होता है 10x engineer? थोड़ा वो समझाओ कि ये वो उसका mind वो mindset में different होता है, skill में different होता है, different होता है. I would just want to hear that out.
Okay, so few things. A lot of people, when they hear the term engineer or engineering, they always gravitate towards a one-line answer saying it's basically a person who solves a problem, right? And that is the most common definition that we all hear. But I want to add some more points to that. That I don't believe engineer is someone who simply solves a problem. Obviously, that is the core thing that he or she should focus on, solving a problem. But it's about solving a problem no matter what, right? Irrespective of the circumstances, you somehow find a way. And in our normal, usual language, we call it, even if it requires a jugaad, we would do that, right? But we go a stretch deeper and say it's given a problem, solve it no matter what under some constraints. For example, with respect to constraints, it could be around cost. That, hey, I would want to solve this problem. I would want to build this product with bare minimum cost. I would want to build this product with which gives really high user experience. Or I would want to build this product that responds very quickly. So these could be some of the constraints that engineers, that especially a 10x engineer keeps in mind. A normal engineer would be more like hands who simply executes, but a 10x engineer looks beyond it and says that, hey, given a problem, I would want to solve it no matter what kind of hacks I would want to put in under some constraint. But I would go stretch further and say, no matter what, under some constraint, but in a structured fashion such that I would be able to reuse the solution. And that is where the magic happens. The person who simply solves a problem, that's one point. Because what if you solve a problem and that is not a reusable solution? Then har baar naya solve karna padega, right? What if you solve a problem saying that, hey, bahut sahi jugaad hai, main maar deta hu, but what if the code is not extensible? What if you're not getting the desired performance? You say that it's working in my machine but not in production, right? Constraints are important, right? And taking a stretch further, it needs to be a reusable solution. Now, the one who operates with this mindset is, according to me, is a 10x engineer, because the person is not just thinking of problem diya solution nikala hai, but is also thinking of business, product, and engineering, right? And that is a deadly combo. And that, according to me, is a 10x engineer who looks at it from a holistic view and solves a problem such that the solution can be repetitively used under the constraints, no matter what. That's a mind.
Awesome. Amazing. So I think a very good thing that you spoke about, and I think as product managers, we've also instilled that fact that even before you jump into the solution, you do the discovery, right? And what I mean by discovery is discovery from all lenses, right? Not from a user lens, but from a business economic sense, from maybe multiple lenses, and that is what we have done. But I think मैं एक और चीज जानना चाहता हूँ, वो भी थोड़ा कल्चर और रिलेशनशिप के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से कि ये how does, if you have to define that what should be an ideal relationship between a product manager and engineer, how should that work? वो कैसे काम करता है? और मतलब ये कोलैबोरेशन, शायद मेरा क्वेश्चन थोड़ा
I totally get it. I totally get it.
कैसे, क्योंकि ये बड़ी प्रॉब्लम होती है. मैं एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देता हूँ कि अपनी जगह पता प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है. प्रॉब्लम ये रहती है कि अगर मैं एक इंजीनियर के पास जाऊं और इंजीनियर को कुछ बोलूं कि भाई मुझे ये फीचर बनाना है, a lot of times the product lens of it is that how do I believe if the engineering saying something that complex or not? How do I build that trust यार कि ये कैसे होगा? और तभी मिसट्रस्ट क्रिएट होता है कि नहीं यार हो सकता है मैं इसके पास जाऊं और हो सकता है, और इंजीनियर बोलता है रिक्वायरमेंट क्लियर नहीं है, तो वो कैसे काम करेगा? आई जस्ट वांट टू हियर योर व्यूज ऑन दैट.
सबसे पहला, वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड एंड एस्टैब्लिश दैट बोथ आर इन द सेम टीम. Both are working towards the same mission. Now the biggest problem is it's not that engineer is at a slightly above pedestal than a PM and vice versa, right? But an engineer needs to tone down the technical side of things while explaining, while the PM needs to chop down the jargon. And both of them needs to understand this, right? Because not every engineer would understand jargon. For example, when during my first interaction with the PM, I just graduated out of my master's, and first interaction with PM सीधा क्या है, LTV, this, that, नहीं पता, right? Now this is where empathy comes in. Again, it's not empathy towards the user. Obviously, that is important to build great products. But again, within the team itself, you need to understand that you need to be empathetic towards who is doing what, how those things are being, like how are you actually communicating, right? Now that is something that we need to understand, that both the parties need to talk down, and that's where the magic happens. First. Second is there needs to be, what I have personally believed is there needs to be a bond. Like when I was working at an academy, I used to hang out with PMs more than engineers because I had to understand those requirements really well. And when we gelled up together, even if it requires slightly higher effort from their end or my end, we are willing to go a stretch above and beyond. Right? So we handled search, and the PM of search is what I used to work with every single day, and we built a camaraderie, and that really helps. Like people typically think of it as a professional relationship, but if you go slightly, and I'm not saying be best friends with that person, but slightly more on human level, even if you mess up, but you would be willing to go that above and beyond part and explain it one more time, or him or her explaining you one more time. So, which is what I believe. And although I've seen that big organizations, a purely professional relationship works pretty well, but that is a very process-driven organization, typically a FAANG type stuff where everything happens on a dock. But in a startup where, or maybe in a high-paced environment, that might not always be the case because docs typically slow you down. Right? So yeah, that's my take on that.
Awesome, यार. And यार इसी पे ना मतलब मैं एक और चीज पूछना चाहता हूँ कि the way you have grown as a person, a lot of people when retrospectively look at things, and I'm slightly shifting the conversation to a different is that retrospectively ना लोगों को काफी बार ये लगता है कि शायद मैं इतना कि मेरी जो काबिलियत आई वो मतलब उसको मैं किसी तरह कनेक्ट कर लेता हूँ, लेकिन जब वो प्रिपेयर कर रहा होता है ना, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इफ someone goes into a PM interview or a SD interview and gets brutally rejected, right? A lot of time the person loses motivation, probably thinks that what the external opinion is. How do you keep yourself resilient, because you have grown from companies which are ठीक है, अच्छी companies हैं, but then to best companies, and then at least according to people's lens, I would say लोगों के लेंस से, और आपने वो जंप किया और साथ में आप फिर एक चॉइस और भी बनाया और आपने गूगल भी छोड़ दी, और तो क्या मन में ये कैसे ये सेल्फ वर्थ वाला जो वो फील होता है कि आई एम गुड, बट व्हाट इज गुड इवन मीन, राइट? कि क्या लोग बोल रहे हैं तुम अच्छे हो, या तुम्हें किसी तरीके से तुम्हारे पास कोई एंकर पॉइंट होता है जिससे तुम जानते हो कि यार कि आई कैन टेक रिस्की डिसीजंस नाउ एंड I can think about it because I have kind of belief system in my, क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोगों की पता दिक्कत क्या होती है, they don't leave a bad culture till they find another role, and that is sometimes more brutal than the actual scenario. तो मैं बस जानना चाहता हूँ कि how do you build resilience in the face of adversity? That is something that I want to understand.
So imposter syndrome is real. When you work with smart people, you will have imposter syndrome. You will think कि सही जगह पर नहीं हूँ, इतना आता नहीं है, and that is a good part and the bad part depending on how you take it. Right? There is no one way to look at it कि नहीं ये मतलब अर्पित ने बोला अच्छा है तो नहीं अभी imposter syndrome सही है and मतलब always challenge yourself. Some people are not good at taking pressure. So first of all, what I believe is you need to know what kind of person you are. For example, I can take pressure and I can thrive in an ambiguous environment. That's my superpower. And I know a lot of great engineers who are not good at doing it. But this does not mean कि उनका करियर अच्छा नहीं है. एडवर्सिटीज की डेफिनेशन सबके लिए अलग अलग होती है या फिर सबका टॉलरेंस लेवल टू एडवर्सिटी अलग होता है, राइट? सो one thing that I always understood is whenever I faced imposter syndrome at workplace interviews या जो भी कुछ होता है या कुछ खराब हुआ, one thing I realized that मतलब it's basically a common fact कि हम लोग नेगेटिव चीज को 3x more weight देता है as compared to anything positive that happens to us, right? So during that time, one thing that I always ensure is I don't lose my self belief. अगर मेरा self belief जा रहा है, अगर मेरा खुद पे से confidence जा रहा है, then it is almost near permanent damage. मैं वो नहीं होने देता हूँ मेरे साथ. At any given point in time when I feel कि मेरा permanent damage हो सकता है या मेरा self belief बहुत affect होने वाला है इससे, I simply take a step back. Be it a project, be it a team, be it an organization, right? Or be it even an interview. So I actually left an interview midway because of this very reason. Because although the question was easy, and it was like 7 years back, the question was really easy, and I knew कि मैं नहीं solve कर पाऊंगा ये because I panicked. But then, and again, I knew कि अगर वो company जाती भी तो I would be appearing for other companies as well. So I chose to leave that interview midway because I knew कि अगर मैं जाऊंगा, उसने कुछ बोला कि अरे इतना easy था, तो मतलब one sentence from them कि इतना easy था और तू नहीं कर पाया, it would damage my self belief. I know I would be able to do it. It's just that due to some reason I was not able to do it at that moment. And सबके लाइफ में आता है, मतलब you may be the best engineer out there, लेकिन एक moment of weakness होता है कि तुम नहीं कर पाते, मतलब वो चिंदी क्वेश्चन होता है फिर भी नहीं हो पाता, right? And at that time I typically fight versus flight in the time of like जब मुझे पता है कि मेरा self belief affect होगा, I'm not scared of challenges. I'm scared कि मेरा self belief नहीं हटना चाहिए because the only thing that I have is the confidence, क्योंकि वो नहीं रहा. And again, very slim line between confidence and overconfidence. So you need to know your strengths and limitations. But if I know that my self-image will be hampered because of this, I take a step back. कि यार accept कर लो कि नहीं हो पाएगा, and that is perfectly fine. ताकि you don't have a permanent scar. यार ऐसा हो गया. So that's one thing that I typically do. So in case of adversities, this is what I do. And so self-belief, and which is what made me leave Google and basically start a company, because I knew that I am operating in my zone of strength, which is to take product from 0 to 1 and 1 to 10. Right? I knew because the following that I built will help me gain initial traction on the product. So I am always, although it's a massive challenge, but the key thing is that because of the self-belief that I have, I know that I'm not going to, like, it's still not an extremely risky bet. I'm still operating out of my strength. And that is, again, it all boils down to having that high self-belief, be it in adversity or in a very high challenging situation or whatever it could be. So I ensure that basically doesn't happen.
But one of the things that I really want to ask you is कि काफी लोगों के लिए जीवन में ये होता है कि ego becomes self-belief, कि मेरे को लोग कैसे perceive कर रहे हैं, that is the definition of how good I am or how good I should be. At least how the other people perceive, right? और कई बार क्या होता है जीवन में जब वो सिचुएशन, क्योंकि स्टैटिस्टिकली तो हर एक चीज पॉसिबल है, राइट? तो वो 3 बार ऐसे इंसिडेंट हो गए जहां पे तुम्हें बोल दिया कि तुम अच्छे नहीं हो, तो आपका वो टूट जाता है, वो बिलीव टूट जाता है, एंड देन यू गो स्पाइरल इनटू लाइक अ डिप्रेशन एंड व्हाटएवर एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट, राइट? तो ये डिस्टिंक्शन कैसे करें यार अर्पित कि ये अब जो मैं ये बात कर रहा हूँ ये गुरूर से नहीं आ रहा, ये घमंड से नहीं आ रहा, ये जेन्युइन डेप्थ ऑफ थॉट से आ रहा है यार कि हाउ डू आई एसेंशियली. सो दैट्स व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग, कि आपने सेल्फ बिलीव बोला, बट सेल्फ बिलीव का डेफिनेशन भी तो लोगों के लिए अलग अलग.
सही बात.
तो कैसे, इज देयर अ वे टू डिसर्न दैट व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज मेरिटोरियस, दैट्स व्हाई आई एम सेइंग इट एंड नॉट फॉर जस्ट अदर पीपल टू हियर?
इट्स बेसिकली लाइक द वे आई वुड लुक एट इट, लाइक अगर अभी मैं सोचूं इसके बारे में, इट वुड बी एज सिंपल एज कि डिड आई हैव इनफ पास्ट अचीवमेंट्स to back my self-belief. अगर वो नहीं है ना तो ईगो है. If you have proven, like for example, I got promoted at my first job in 6 months. I got 3 excellence awards, right? I got very quick promotion in 7 years. I'm staff at Google. कुछ तो आता होगा मेरे को, right? Again, if I focus on like given the kind of achievements, and again, joining Google is obviously not an achievement of mine, but 7 years में staff is something in the eyes of society. It's a very big thing. लोग 15 साल में क्रैक नहीं करते.
Correct, makes sense.
So that is in itself is a big thing. लोगों के हिसाब से, because when I joined तब मुझे realize हुआ कि बड़ी चीज हुई है. But for me it was more about कि मैं कंपनी में रुक के how much of impact have I made. मेरा पुराना मैनेजर मेरे साथ टच में है कि नहीं है. That is something that I see. Because if you're not made impact, you're like you would never be in touch with your manager. मैं आज तक मेरे हर एक मैनेजर के साथ टच में. Because like वे even like बहुत अभी तो आजकल सीधा होता है कि इंटरव्यू भी नहीं दे, आजा सीधा वैसा वाला बात चालू हो गया. The thing is because I have made proven impact. Like when I announced, मुझे immediately मेरे दोनों एक्स मैनेजर का, मेरे एक्चुअली 3 एक्स मैनेजर थे, उसमें 2 का कॉल आया. अरे कांग्रेचुलेशन, सो हैप्पी टू सी दिस वाला पार्ट, राइट? अगर वो camaraderie नहीं होती, अगर वो proven impact नहीं होता, right? So again, these data points would help you understand that is it actual self-belief and you were being true to yourself, or was it delusional? Was it ego? मुझे लगता है मैं तोड़ू बट नहीं आता है ना. अगेन सबको सब कुछ आने की जरूरत नहीं. There are some things that I don't know at all, but the things that I know, do I know it better than anybody else? Yes. And do I have data to prove it? Sure. Right? So quick promotions, early staff, excellence, and more importantly, पुराने colleagues और पुराने managers touch. Right? So that means कि तुमने झूठ वूठ मैंने कुछ नहीं बोला. It is actually that happened and people are recognized.
But एक बात तो, and since you are an educator and I wanted to ask a question on building a following and specifically from engineer's point of view, तो मैं एक कई बार तो बच्चों के साथ ऐसा भी होता है ना, a lot of students might come to you now that you have scaled beyond. I know initial cohorts तेरे very focused on very focused audience थे, but I think now you're scaled, you're talking to more people. तो ऐसे बच्चे भी तो होते हैं ना यार आपके पास, जिनके साथ जीवन में जिनको लगता है बुरा ही हो रहा है, उनके पास तो कोई अचीवमेंट नहीं है. तो वो सेल्फ बिलीव कैसे बनाए? मतलब मैं आपको बोल रहा हूँ कि लेट्स अज्यूम you and me were fortunate enough that we have our own set of accolades that we look down to and say कि हाँ यार ये किया है जीवन में तो कुछ तो किया ही है. तो लेकिन जिनके लिए नहीं है, और मेजॉरिटी ऑडियंस अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो टियर 3 से आती है, जो वैसी ऑडियंस होती है, उनके साथ वही प्रॉब्लम होता है. उनके लिए कैसे, हाउ डू यू बिल्ड रेजिलियंस इन दैट? सॉरी, आई एम जस्ट एक्सपैंडिंग ऑन दिस क्वेश्चन, बट आई जस्ट वांटेड टू हियर योर थॉट्स ऑन इट.
So one thing that I realized is अगर ऐसा नहीं है, let's say either you are starting from a blank slate, यार अभी जस्ट करियर स्टार्ट हुआ है, या due to any reason you did not have good experience in the first couple of years of your career and whatnot, right? So in that case, the only, like if I were to put myself in that situation, then the only thing that I would think of is the amount of knowledge that I've gained. Again, it might not be proven, but if it gives me that confidence, then good enough. Because what self-belief, even though it's made up, even though it's unproven, I still should be backing on it, because without that motivation or without that self-belief, it's very hard to cope up in this hyper-competitive world, right? So मैं होता तो मैं यही करता, and I think this is what I did during my college. Like I used to stammer a lot during my BTech. There, like we used to get dragged and all a lot. So what used to happen was हमें बोलते थे कि like I'm talking 2008. तो वो हमें बोलते थे कि अगर तुमने ग्रुप छोड़ दिया तो सीनियर्स तुम्हारी हेल्प नहीं करेंगे, right? Now this is when I had zero इम्पैक्ट, जीरो अकम्प्लिशमेंट, कुछ नहीं किया था लाइफ. बट मैं ग्रुप छोड़ा क्योंकि मेरे को रैंकिंग नहीं देनी थी, एंड आई गेव दैट स्टेटमेंट कि मुझे सीनियर की जरूरत नहीं है. नाउ दिस is self-belief versus ego. क्योंकि मुझे भरोसा था कि I believe in hard work. Now I'll just expand into very simple thing. Basically there is a concept called as locus of identity. कि तुम्हारा identity कहाँ पे है? So if you have an external locus of identity, which means you typically rely on कि अरे मेरा खराब हुआ because A factor, B factor, C factor. I'll give very genuine example. Indian mindset में most of the people have external locus of identity. मेरा अच्छा नहीं हुआ क्योंकि एजुकेशन सिस्टम अच्छा, 20 साल होने के बाद मैं एजुकेशन सिस्टम को क्रिप नहीं कर सकता. मेरा अच्छा नहीं हुआ क्योंकि माँ बाप ने जबरदस्ती फील्ड में डाला. सो वी टेंड टू गो टुवर्ड्स एन एक्सटर्नल आइडेंटिटी, व्हिच इज व्हाई व्हेनेवर वी टेक डिसीजन, हम 10 लोगों से पूछते हैं कि अगर कुछ खराब हुआ ना तो बोलेंगे अबे यार उनका था, मेरा तो कुछ हाथ नहीं था. एंड देन देयर इज इंटरनल लोकस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी, व्हाटएवर आई डू इट्स माय हार्ड वर्क, माय पेशेंस, सही हुआ मेरा, खराब हुआ मेरा. सो व्हाट आई रियलाइज इज माय लोकस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी इज डीप विद इन. मैं कभी ऐसा नहीं, आई डोंट लाइक टू लीव एनीथिंग ऑन एक्सटर्नल फैक्टर. तो जब मैंने रैंकिंग के इस पे भी छोड़ा था, इट वाज लाइक कि मैं देख लूंगा, मुझे नहीं है जरूरत. और लिटरली बोल रहा हूँ, मेरे बहुत सारे कॉलेज के सीनियर मेरे पास आए हुए थे, भाई गाइड करते, मेरा कोर्स लिया है, इट फील्स गुड, बट इट्स नॉट ईगो. मेरे को अभी भी ऐसा नहीं कि वो आए आए तुमको दिखा दिया मैंने ऐसा ऐसा, बट इट जनरली फील्स गुड दैट आई लिव्ड बाय माय वर्ड्स. रैगिंग भी नहीं दी और रिस्पेक्ट भी अर्न किया, बिकॉज सेल्फ बिलीफ. सो फॉर मी सेल्फ बिलीफ इज मोर अबाउट एन आउटकम ऑफ योर हार्ड वर्क. अरे ट्वीट वर्दी चीजें बोल रहा हूँ मैं. सेल्फ बिलीफ इज समथिंग दैट इज अ बाय प्रोडक्ट ऑफ योर हार्ड वर्क, एंड आई एम अ ह्यूज बिलीवर ऑफ हार्ड वर्क. आई एम नॉट स्मार्ट, आई एम एक्सट्रीमली हार्ड वर्किंग. नो वन कैन बीट मी इन वर्किंग हार्ड. तो मैं वो एंगल से लेता हूँ, एंड विद दैट एज अ माइंडसेट आई केप्ट वर्किंग हार्ड, एंड फिर चीजें अपने आप सेटल होती गई. सो आई वुड थिंक मोर ऑन दोस लाइंस दैट इफ आई वर इन दैट शू कि पास्ट कुछ नहीं है, दैट अमाउंट ऑफ इवन दो थ्योरेटिकल नॉलेज, इवन दो थोड़ा सा हैंड्स ऑन किया हुआ है वो, राइट, बट अमाउंट ऑफ बिलीव दैट आई वुड हैव वुड कम फ्रॉम द हार्ड वर्क दैट आई. अगेन इट माइट साउंड स्लाइटली वेग, बट आई ट्राई टू गिव एज मच एग्जांपल्स एज आई कुड, बट आई हैप्पी टू एलैबोरेट ऑन एनी ऑफ द पॉइंट्स लेटर इन द
यार
सेशन.
मैं फिर एक और बात पूछूंगा. मतलब वन ऑफ द थिंग्स दैट अनफॉर्चुनेटली मोस्ट पीपल टेंड टू थिंक, एटलीस्ट पीपल हु आर नॉट इन द डेव वर्ल्ड, मतलब इन दैट सेंस दैट दे डोंट एक्टिवली राइट कोड, राइट, दे हैव दिस बिलीफ सिस्टम कि डेव्स जो है वो सिर्फ टेक्निकल सुपीरियोरिटी या टेक्निकल स्किल सेट के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ही सोचते हैं, राइट. लेकिन अभी आपने एक बहुत बढ़िया बात है कि आपने बोला कि मेरे तीनों मैनेजर मेरे को फोन करते हैं, ठीक है, देन मे बी देयर आर कॉलीग्स हु रीच बैक टू यू. तो यानी कि यू हैव मेंटेन्ड रिलेशनशिप्स आल्सो, राइट. You have built to, and probably you learn from in each relationship. At some point you are the teacher and some point you are the student, right? I think each relationship teaches you that. तो यार वो थोड़ा माइंडसेट बताओ कि ये जनरली, क्योंकि डेव अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम अपना वर्ल्ड व्यू वैसे ही बिल्ड करते हैं ना, जो ज्यादा सुनते हैं वही सत्य है. बट a lot of time consensus leads to stupidity. But any which ways मैं ये पूछ रहा हूँ, तो वो आपने कैसे किया? How did you imbibe that thought कि यार मुझे शायद रिश्ते बनाने पड़ेंगे, वही मुझे अच्छा बनाएगा जीवन में, और उन रिश्तों ऑनेस्ट भी होना पड़ेगा इन टर्म्स ऑफ एटलीस्ट एफर्ट, इफ नॉट आउटकम्स, बिकॉज आउटकम्स तो कई बार हमारे कंट्रोल में नहीं होते, बट एटलीस्ट हार्डवर्क के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से.
आई एम एक्सट्रीमली इंट्रोवर्ट. मैं नहीं बनाया रिश्ते. आई लर्नड इट द हार्ड वे व्हेन आई सॉ अदर पीपल विद देयर कॉन्टेक्ट. आज भी इतना कॉन्टेक्ट नहीं है. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल, इफ यू टॉक अबाउट अस, यू मैसेज्ड मी फर्स्ट, राइट. मेरे को नहीं आता, मेरे को नहीं चमकता, मैं इसको क्या मैसेज डालूं, बिकॉज आई ऑलवेज थिंक कि मैं इसकी लाइफ में क्या ऐड कर दूंगा, राइट. सो मेरा हमेशा से वो माइंडसेट था. तो मेरा ये था कि व्हेन आई रियलाइज दैट कुछ होना चाहिए या कुछ नेटवर्क करना चाहिए, बिकॉज एवरीबडी वाज टॉकिंग अबाउट इट, मेरा अगेन बिकॉज ऑफ वेरी डीप विद इन लोकस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी, मैं बोला मैं इतना मेहनत करूंगा, इतना अच्छा डालूंगा कि लोग अपने आप रीच आउट करें, जेन्युइनली स्पीकिंग, राइट. सो मैं वो एंगल से दिया था, बिकॉज आई एम नॉट एन एक्सट्रोवर्ट पर्सन. लोगों को देख के बिलीव नहीं होता, जो यूट्यूबर है वो कैसे एक्सट्रोवर्ट नहीं हो सकता, नहीं आता मेरे को. मैं बहुत, आई एम वेरी बैड. आई एम ट्राइंग टू बी बेटर. लाइक फॉर एग्जाम्पल, न्यू ईयर गया, जब वो अच्छे अच्छे लोग मेरे को मैसेज करते हैं, मतलब इसको मैसेज करना कैसे भूल गया, अरे इसको मैसेज कर, मतलब वो फील होता है, वो हर्ट होता है. बट आई एम ट्राइंग टू बिकम बेटर एट इट. बट अभी तक मेरी स्ट्रेटेजी यही थी कि बिकॉज ऑफ माई हार्ड वर्क आई ट्राई टू क्रिएट एज मच इम्पैक्ट दैट पीपल वुड वांट टू कम एंड टॉक टू मी, एंड एज अ बाय प्रोडक्ट वो नेटवर्क बिल्ड होगा. लाइक वी बीइंग द परफेक्ट एग्जांपल ऑफ दैट. बट मेरा एक चीज, वन थिंग दैट आई फील इज माय सुपर पावर इज, अगर मैं किसी से 2 साल बाद भी बात करूं, जैसे हमने बीच में 1 साल तक ऑलमोस्ट बात नहीं की थी, फिर भी ऐसे बात होता है जैसे कुछ हुआ ही नहीं है.
करेक्ट.
सो दैट इज माय सुपर पावर, दैट आई एम इमीडिएटली एट ईज व्हेन टॉकिंग, एंड आई मेक अदर पर्सन फील एट ईज एज वेल. तो वो मेरा,
दैट इज द सुपर पावर ना डूड, वही तो बात है.
वो जो रिज्यूमेबिलिटी है ना, वो है मेरे. सो बट अगेन आई एम स्टिल लर्निंग.
मैं बस इतना ही बोल रहा हूँ, वो सब जगह होती नहीं है. मतलब मैं वही तुम्हें बताने की कोशिश कर रहा हूँ कि आई थिंक दैट मेक्स सो मच सेंस, एंड मे बी यू आर नॉट गिविंग ड्यू क्रेडिट टू दैट, बट दैट नीड्स क्रेडिट, राइट. कि हाँ, आपको पता है कि आप किस इंसान से किस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बात कर रहे हो और किस तरह बात कर रहे हो, और अगर आप स्विच कर सकते हो तभी आप उसकी प्रोबेबली वल्नरेबिलिटी को, उसके थॉट को समझ सकते हो कि वो बंदा कहाँ से आ रहा है. अब एक लास्ट सवाल बिफोर आई जंप इनटू, आई नो वी आर एट 7:30 ऑलमोस्ट. यार इतनी मेहनत करके अपनी इतनी फॉलोइंग बनाई, इसका थोड़ा जर्नी का चीज बताओ कि यार कि कैसे ग्रो किया, क्या थॉट था, क्या आप इसलिए लिखते थे कि जनता को पढ़ना है, क्या आप इसलिए लिखते थे कि आप, अब तो यू ऑलरेडी सेड दैट आई हैव इंटरनल लोकस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी, सो आई रोट which probably needs to be said and I find it interesting, right? But is there a balance game, and why is it important that you, even in this time, you have something like a social game so that people understand what the kind of work, and probably you multiply your impact. तो मैं ये story सुनना चाहता हूँ यार. By the way, Arpit has almost 15,000 more followers than me on LinkedIn and double that amount.
ये कब हो गया? मैं कब क्रॉस कर गया तेरे को?
आज तक क्या कि मुझे क्रॉस. तो anyway, ठीक है. तो anyway, तो भाई, I want to hear this journey for everyone. Yeah.
So one thing I've always believed is be selfish when you're on social platform. मैं लिखता इसलिए नहीं था that I wanted followership. If your end goal is to get followership, तो मैं नहीं मिलेगी because then you would always go in the trajectory to put कि ये चल रहा है, मैं यही डालूंगा.
Correct.
Right? For example, when I was preparing my course, आखिरी 8th वीक में आई आस्क्ड माय वाइफ कि क्या डालूं. उसने बोला सिस्टम डिजाइन का कोर्स बना रहा है ना, पुट इंटरव्यू का स्टफ, बिकॉज हर कोई वही करता है, सिस्टम डिजाइन इज इक्वल टू इंटरव्यू. मैंने बोला नहीं यार ये नहीं करना. तो मैंने वो एल्गोरिथमिक सिस्टम डिजाइन डाला व्हिच इज स्लाइटली हायर और डीप एल्गोरिथम्स के बारे में बात कर. नाउ दैट मेड द डिफरेंस बिकॉज नाउ आई एम simply differentiating myself from an interview versus someone who sparks that engineering curiosity. वो वाला पार्ट है. So मेरा यही था कि वो जो माइंडसेट था मेरा, I started writing in 2020, started as a New Year resolution and every Sunday I dissected one research paper and wrote about it. मेरे को आज भी मेरे को 2 लाइक भी नहीं आते थे उसके ऊपर, but I kept doing it. For how many times? 52. Literally every Sunday I posted one. One of the newsletter I wrote while I was traveling from my hometown to my wife's hometown because my daughter was being born. वहां पे बैठ के लिख के पब्लिश किया मैंने. Now that is something that I did because, and that came because not I wanted followers, but because I made a commitment to myself and I was really interested in writing about it. Yeah. So first thing is whatever you're putting out on social platform, understand what you want to achieve. If you're putting out what everybody else is putting in just to gain followers, then तुम्हें वही followers मिल रहे हैं जो सबको मिल रहे हैं. One thing we need to understand, India का, especially if I talk about India pyramid, it's like this. Base बहुत बड़ा है, right? And if you're slightly better, you suddenly are exponentially better than a lot of people, right? Now, because of this as pyramid, you would see a lot of noise coming from the base. Wahi narcissistic podcast, zero value add, just talking about random stuff, what works, like vlogs ho gaye, lifestyle ho gayi, ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya. I know a lot of people like it and there is nothing wrong in it. But one thing I believed is because I was very selfish, I wrote because I wanted to know it better. Yeah. और उसके वजह से क्या हुआ ना, I was able to create that differentiator. भले मेरे को नहीं है, मेरे को पहले 3 साल में कहा 20,000 भी लोग नहीं फॉलो कर रहे, and I never looked at that number. मेरा ये था मैं डालते रहूंगा and I always talk about tough topics. Now what happened was, because I was bringing more to the table, a newer thing to the table, it became easier for people to recognize. And then came the master stroke, मेरा hashtag. वो एक दिन मैं लिटरली बोल रहा हूँ, मैं एक रात पहले गली बॉय देखा था वापस से, और वो रिबेलियर वाला था, इसलिए मेरा आइकन, मेरा फॉन्ट भी वो रिबेल वाला वो फॉन्ट है, असली इंजीनियरिंग वाला. एंड दैट हैशटैग डिड दैट ट्रिक. लिटरली आई एम नॉट जोकिंग. अनअकैडमी की मार्केटिंग टीम आके मेरे को पूछी कि तूने कैसा बनाया, मतलब अनअकैडमी वांटेड टू डू इट विद लेट्स क्रैक इट, और वो नहीं एस्टैब्लिश कर पाते जितना मैंने असली इंजीनियरिंग से एस्टैब्लिश किया, राइट? दे केम फॉर टिप्स की तूने ऐसा कैसे सोचा, तूने ये कैसे किया. सो they were trying to peek into my brains. Now that helped, and because it's not just hashtag, but because I justified that hashtag by never putting out interview stuff, by never putting out surface level content, by never putting out lifestyle stuff, I stick to my guns. And again, it became a two-way thing. That hashtag kept me on my track, irrespective of the number. Like for example, मेरा YouTube stats बताऊंगा तो तुम लोग बोलेंगे क्या क्यों कर रहा है YouTube. 75,000 followers, average view on a video is 7,000. 10% लोग देखते मेरा वीडियो सिर्फ. मेरा YouTube revenue is just 12,000 rupees a month. That's it. देखते ही नहीं है वीडियो मेरा. But am I doing it for views? अगर मैं करता तो मैं लाइफस्टाइल ब्लॉग्स डालता, वैसे फालतू किसी से डालता. बट आई एम स्टेइंग ट्रू टू इट बिकॉज आई एम एडिंग मोर टू द टेबल. नाउ व्हेन समवन कम्स टू माय चैनल और माय न्यूज़लेटर और माय सोशल मीडिया, दे वुड सी कि अरे ये साला फालतू बातें नहीं कर रहा. तो what kind of, and again, the brand is what people talk about you behind your back when you are not in the room, right? तो लोग मेरे बारे में ये नहीं बोलते कि आप फालतू इंसान. लोग हमेशा ये बात करते हैं कि अरे अच्छा कुछ कर रहा है. मेरे को हर बार कोई ना कोई मिलता है, एंड नॉट वो मेरे से डायरेक्ट बात नहीं करता, वो बोलते हैं कि उसकी कंपनी में लोग मेरे बारे में बात करते हैं, which feels good, क्योंकि वो बिहाइंड द बैक, जब मैं रूम में नहीं, रूम में तो हर कोई तारीफ करेगा. अभी श्रवण ने करी तारीफ, असली तब होगा जब वो पीछे भी यही बात कर. अगर वो कर रहा है then that is the perception that I have, right? Sure. So again, to summarize, I was selfish. I put out because I wanted to learn. I added more to the table than I took from the table. That helped me add a differentiator. Hashtag was the master stroke, because people relate to a mission versus just a face who is putting it out, right? So that was clear that it is no fluff, just engineering stuff. And although people don't watch my videos, but when they do, they know कि यार ये no bullshit वाला person है. तो उससे ना clarity मिलती है लोगों को. And why I'm still doing it even though I'm not earning anything out of it, sheer passion. If you are not passionate about it, तो कुछ नहीं हो पाए. If you're just doing it for followers, तो बहुत मुश्किल है to sustain that. I write 2 posts every single day for last 8 years. One YouTube video, I have 168 or 170 videos on YouTube पे, right? I have how many? 82 articles on my newsletter. और सब अलग content है, सब अलग content. ऐसा नहीं है कि वही चीज यहाँ पे डाला, वही चीज यहाँ पे डाला, सब अलग कंटेंट. आई हैव रेड 80 something research papers and dissected 30 or 40 of them and put out as newsletter. That happens because of genuine interest. Right? अब ये पूरे का summarization, मतलब ये पूरे का combination is what I have achieved. And again, there might be people who have taken some other path and have gained much more than me. But at the end, मेरा simple है. If I'm losing smile on my face doing what I'm doing, I would leave that stuff. There is smile नहीं जाना चाहिए, खुश रहने का. मतलब basically whatever I'm doing, I need to be really happy doing it. So I typically stop doing something जो करते वक्त मेरा मुंह उखड़ा है, अरे यार आज पोस्ट करना पड़ेगा. Versus अरे ये लिखते, वो वैसा वाला पार्ट है. So that is my thing कि मुझे कब बंद करना है.
Makes sense. Now these guys understand why I said that we both are similar people. But any which ways. ठीक है जनता. So what I would now want is please raise your hands and I will start putting people in the spotlight. Anybody who wants to start with, yeah, please. नहीं डरने का भाई जनता. ठीक है. Cool. So I will start. Aditya, can you show your face? That would be great. Dave and other people, please. Aditya, can you start?
Give me a minute.
I won't be able to put you in the spotlight then. Okay, let me start with Dave. Dave, would you be able to open your?
Guys, am I visible?
Yeah. Atharv, can you move him to the spotlight?
Yeah.
At least for my view, it shows that you three are on the screen. Yeah. So that's
Okay. Okay. Got it.
Go for it. So Dave is joining us from Dubai. By the way, he's already a senior PM in a Dubai-based e-commerce company. So Dave, please, over to you. Yeah.
Hi, Arpit. Thank you so much, man. Really, the words you said were very inspiring. So thank you so much for taking our time today. So I have a question more on the tech side of it. Things generally for engineers, the more computing, the raw horsepower you have, the more complex problems you can solve, right? And as per Moore's law, that computing power has been almost doubling for the last 3 decades. Now, recently, Apple launched its 3 nanometer chip, and the theoretical boundary, they say that after 1 nanometer, you can't shrink it down any further. So that kind of puts a physical limit to the number of raw horsepower you can take out of a system, right? So does it mean that over time, we won't be able to solve more complex problems? Because I believe there are infinite number of complex problems to solve in this world. So does that put us into a limit? And part B of this question is, they say that quantum computing would be something which would revolutionize and would continue that Moore's law going forward and would be in a position to solve those even more critical problems. So I just want to understand what's your take on it and how far are we behind in terms of achieving true quantum computing?
That's an amazing question. So one thing, a lot of people believe quantum computing is going to revolutionize. Yes, it is, but we are way lagging in it. Like for example, right now, the most powerful quantum computer can factorize 35 or something. Only that big of a number. 2-digit 35. That's it. It is not able to go beyond that. And again, it's just matter of time where a lot of physicists, a lot of mathematicians, and a lot of engineers work together to solve that thing. But the thing is, one thing that I've observed is unless something becomes a massive pain point, people don't solve it with food. Like for example, when COVID became pain point, you saw suddenly like what vaccine used to take like 10, 20 years, we got it inside 1 year. Right? And that is the thing that when we put a lot of humans under pressure, we come up with solutions. Because if just remember the days of COVID, where people used to show the statistic that on an average it takes 5 years for vaccine to do this and this and this. But what happened? In 6 months, we all got vaccinated. Right? So right now, quantum computing is a vitamin, not a painkiller. Right? For example, EVs are another example. We say EVs is the future, but still we see a lot of people getting cars that run on petrol. Again, it's still a vitamin, not a painkiller. A lot of people are getting EVs because of obviously the monetary benefit, but still a vitamin, not a painkiller. You still see luxury cars operating out of on petrol. Right? So same thing will happen with quantum computing. Let there be slight distress, and then we would make substantial breakthroughs in. Now coming to the limit part on Moore's law, I totally agree that after a certain point we would not be able to do it. But again, that's where we would be stress test and we would be coming up with other stuff. But that in itself will be quite a bit of sufficient power for us to operate on Earth. If you're solving bigger problems, then we would want to do space travel and whatnot, like what Blue Origin and other folks are doing. That's where we would be hitting the limit. That hey, we want to go beyond this, but we are not able to achieve this. Like that's exactly what happened with experimental physics versus theoretical physics. Like theoretical physics is easily 30 years ahead in the future than experimental physics because we are limited by the experimentation we can perform. For example, if we want to test higher dimensions, we are not able to. We don't have devices to test. And how would we come up with? No one has an idea. Right? That same thing would come over here. That we would be hitting a limit, and everything has a cap. Even this has a cap. Right? And at that point of time, either we stagnate or we hope for a breakthrough to happen. And breakthrough would need to happen because that's where we will be put under stress test that a asteroid is coming towards us. We have to leave Earth in next 20 years, otherwise we are gone. So vaccination jaldi kiya tha, ye bhi jaldi kare. And that's my take on it. And again, I love to draw analogies from other events that happened and deduce because na मैं quantum researcher हूँ, ना मैं chips बनाता हूँ, right? So I love to draw analogies and see how we would react to any adversities that come in.
Makes sense.
Okay, so truly we can say necessity is the mother of innovation. Hopefully that would galvanize us in the direction forward. Thank you so much, Arpit, for answering the
Thanks.
question.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
I will just bring Aditya. Go for it, Aditya.
Yeah, so hi Arpit and Shravan. So my question for Arpit is, so like I looked at your profile and I saw like you have worked for both startups and FAANG companies, right? And you have spent considerable time in both the companies. So my question is like, what is the difference in engineering culture in these two companies, like these two categories, like startups versus FAANG companies? And like also I heard a lot of stigma around FAANG companies that if you join them, you are just a very small node in a very big system. So like you making an impact is chances of you making an impact is very small. So like I just wanted to know like from your experience, like what is the scenario here?
Good question. Okay. First thing, I'm slightly biased towards startup because that's the kind of person I am. So the main difference between the two is startup can afford to have downtimes or mistakes more than FAANG companies. They cannot afford a mistake, right? So because of which they have to move really slow, really slow because they cannot afford to make a mistake, right? Which is why you would see that it is easier for startups. Like one thing I always say, it's easy for startups to build big companies because people also work on weekends. Like, because that's the harsh reality. In big companies, you have to respect each other. Zabardast. Right? You have to be very polite in communication. Before sending email, you read it thrice. Did you include everybody? Did you say thank you? Did you like basically were you polite? Did you use the right words and this and that? Startup mein, hey bhai ye kar de. Bro, please do this. Right? That's the kind of like that induces speed. And I observed this when I was at Amazon. I observed this when I was at Google. Dono jagah. And I observed this when Unacademy grew from a bungalow office where I joined as a 12th engineer to a massive office. Tab wo aa gaya the difference. Hey, why were you not polite in communication and this? And again, it's not that I'm rude, but it's more about it. I don't consider typo as something that I need to worry about. समझ जाएगा ना सामने वाला, right? I'm more of a person who has very strong bias for action. मैं जल्दी act करना चाहता हूँ. नहीं हुआ मेरे को अजीब सा लगता. So that is fine. So big companies would work slow. You are definitely a small component or a small node in a massive system, but this does not take away the things that you get out of. For example, you understand the importance of processes. You understand that why everybody is replaceable and कैसे होता है. In startup एक बंदा धमकी दे सकता है मैं छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ उसका पैकेट डबल कर देगा. बड़ी कंपनी में एक L6 a staff at Google says I'm leaving. इसे how is that even possible? That is because of process. And ऐसा कोई dependency नहीं छोड़ते. Every project there are multiple people involved. It's not one person doing it all. Startup में हो सकता है. बड़े कंपनी का वो फायदा है. Like you understand. Like if you look at it, if you join a big company, and I would highly recommend you do at least once in your career to understand firsthand the impact of having the right processes with respect to अगर engineering side से बोलो तो code review, documentation, बाद में stakeholder management, stakeholder communication, the kind of nuances you learn from them. Number one. Second is the granularity at which you need to think. Basically, you have to think it through. तुम ये नहीं बोल सकते कि भाई अरे ये edge case तो assume ही ना कर ले. Startup में you could say that this was an edge case which you can just do it. यहाँ पे you have to think it through beforehand. You have to be very detailed in everything that you do. You have to be very thorough in what you do. That is part of the company's DNA because they have to make everybody replaceable. Because at a big organization, if one person starts doing मैं जा रहा हूँ छोड़ के जा रहा हूँ पैसा बढ़ा, everybody will start to follow because everybody is smart. Right? So that's why join a big company. I would highly recommend you to do that so that you understand first and you understand and experience the processes part. Number one, how thoroughly you work on things. That's another, right? And then you understand why everybody is replaceable and why you need to do that. Because बहुत फायदा उठा सकते हैं लोग उठाने वाले. So you have to safeguard yourself from, right? And again, with respect to impact, the final point that you raised, yes, it looks like impact is small, but if you can quantify it the right way, it seems like a major impact. because the scale at which you work,
Correct.
you can show the number. Like it's more about art than science. How creatively you can put forth the right quantification for those metrics. For example, one of my very close friends work at Amazon. He works on the item page. Item page में भी नीचे product description वाले पे काम करता है. बोला भाई इतने से पे क्या काम? And that was my first reaction. बोले नहीं bro बहुत होता है. And when he started explaining, you suddenly start to realize कि साला ये इतना सोचते हैं, इतना personalized होता है. They put in so much of effort into thinking it through कि ये ऐसा दिखना चाहिए, ऐसा होना चाहिए. These are the properties for this type of items that needs to be shown. This type of items के लिए ये दिखाना है. Ensuring engineers are able to pull that off within the SLA. Now that requires pretty deep thinking कि करना क्या, right? And that is startup में you add one table for everything and बोलेगा कि डाल देना चल जाए. But बड़े कंपनी because you cannot fail, and even for example 1% of revenue for a startup is peanuts versus 1% of Google revenue. Simple, right? Like और वो ध्यान रखना कि when you, although we think it's a small percentage, but when we think of it in absolute numbers, that's still a significant revenue thing, right? या फिर a significant impact. For example, downtime के case, you save 3 second downtime for a startup. 3 घंटे का downtime कुछ नहीं होता startup के लिए, but a 3 second of downtime of startup may affect let's say $100 million revenue. वो सीधा 0 लगते जाते. And that is where you understand why they are slow, why they have so many people, because they cannot afford to fail. Startup में तो चल जाता है, and that's the biggest thing. But again, I try to cover it all from processes part to this and on the impact side. And again, be creative in, like, you need to be creative to figure out the right quantification of your impact, and that's a drill in itself.
Thank you so much. That helps a lot.
Awesome. One thing that I also want to kind of add here is, I think what he said is absolutely right. Even in a PM role, generally यही होता है, because most problems are ambiguous, right? It's hard to quantify them. So a lot of times, one of the ways people essentially say that I improved something is by showing that कुछ तो metric move हुआ, और वो metric किस scale पे move हो रहा है. उधर 1% of what, as he rightly said, Amazon revenue can be like $50 billion or $4 billion or $5 billion, right? But whereas if you say that कि मैं 50% move किया और तुम्हारे 100 ऑर्डर से 200 ऑर्डर हुए, तो उसकी कोई इज्जत नहीं करेगा. उसकी कोई इज्जत नहीं करेगा. So that is what I'm trying to put across. But great question, man. So Rishabh, I will just quickly pin in Rishabh to this. Yes. ठीक है. So Arpit, just to give you set context, Rishabh bhai comes from a sales background. He has been predominantly doing that for multiple companies, and he is a seasoned professional over there, and he wanted to learn tools of product thinking. So over to you, Rishabh bhai. Go for it.
Hi Shravan, hi Arpit. It's a pleasure having you here. And some of the things that you've said are really, really interesting, especially about imposter syndrome and how do you beat that. Talk about self-belief. I have two questions, and I'll start off with the first one, which is a bit layered, but let me just start off anyway. See, for a person like me who's looking to transition to a PM role, right? I will definitely be working with the dev teams as well, like the tech teams. Some or the other time in the future, going down the line. So if suppose I have the solution that I want to build, right? As a PM, I've come up with a beautiful solution, and I go to the dev team. Sometimes what happens is I may just lack the knowledge to basically build that solution, and I just say, hey, you know what? This is something that I've come up with, and you, the engineer, you can tell me whether this works or not. What happens typically is that the engineer might think, अरे इसको तो कुछ पता ही नहीं है, ये तो ऐसा solution लेके आ रहा है जो इसको, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. The second thing is that even if this happens, right? Engineers कभी-कभी solution का जुगाड़ भी नहीं देते, just because the camaraderie is not there. So my question is, in that case, how does a product manager learn systems from the engineer? Number two, how does he sort of get the engineer to come up with a jugadu solution, or maybe some solution which might be different from what the product manager is thinking, but it reaches the end goal? And the third thing is, how does a product manager actually continuously keep learning from engineers as well? Because it's his job, it's a part of the job.
Yeah.
So this is question number one with these three layers.
Okay. It's a superb thing. I'll start with a small story that we all heard in our preschool. One log, one river, two goats trying to cross. Right? किसी एक को थोड़ा साइड होना पड़ता है ताकि दूसरा जा सकता है. Right? Now in this case, the thing that you said, or the entire picture that you framed was more about let's take someone from the sales background trying to transition into PM, have no knowledge about it. Now in this case, there will be slight hierarchy that dev knows slightly better than what you do, right? And again, you need to first of all accept. You cannot be egoistic and say कि अरे ऐसे कैसे behave कर लिया. थोड़ा सा like ये इस तरह की basically शादी वाला सीन है कि पति पत्नी को साथ में रहना है, किसी एक को तो गलती माननी हो ना हो माननी पड़ी, right? तो ही गाड़ी ढंग से चले, right? Same thing goes over here, right? That except कि थोड़ा सा egoistic हो सकता है वो, because at the end if you retaliate, फिर सब कचरा हो जाए. The day you understand this, that if both the sides are having an ego, कि मैं नहीं बताऊंगा, तेरे को पता नहीं है, तुम उल्टा हो गया, फिर कोई नहीं जीता, राइट? और उसमें बेफालतू में फिर खटास आ जाती है, and then you make an abrupt decision to leave, or he or she makes the decision to leave, right? So someone has to be understanding, and this is what happened to me. In our case, one of the engineers was like this, and the PM had zero background. He was actually an APM of fresher. So the way I dealt with this was exactly this. कि मैं बोला मेरे इंजीनियर को कि तू समझा, अगर तेरा ज्यादा टाइम जा रहा है तो मेरे को बता, मैं समझा दूं. So I had to take that additional effort, and I did that. Right? So someone has to. अगर नहीं करेंगे तो company will not win. The business or the product will not win. Both the parties will. And in turn, company will. पहला. दूसरा is try it. In some cases it is okay to fake. कि for example सुन लिया बात, हाँ ऐसा है, and घर पे जाके पढ़ा कि क्या बोल के गया है. And that is essential. Like especially when you're transitioning, or when you're switching domains, right? Maybe in your case, it's a massive shift. And if I talk about engineering, let's say you move from backend to data side of it, right? You will hear a lot of new terms. You will need to put in that extra effort. You cannot say I just work 9 to 5 और उतने में जितना समझा. Because when you're making this big shift, you have to first fake कि ऐसा समझ में आ गया, and then go and understand कि क्या बोला. In some cases, you have to do. And first of all, you should not expect कि in that 1 hour meeting or 30 minutes meeting सब clear हो जाएगा. It's not possible. So at a lot of places, you would be saying yes, सही है, कर लेते हैं. Go back home, read about it, and then you realize कि तो साला फालतू solution है. इससे simpler कुछ हो सकता है. Very much possible. I've seen it far too many times to happen. So in that case, if you realize, यहाँ पे दो केस, either you realize early in the product life cycle, or you realize very late. So first of all, try to realize it early, which means जब भी तुमने ऐसे soft commit कर दिया, घर पे जाके immediately देखो और बोला कि मैंने रात को सोचा और मेरे को ये सही नहीं लग रहा, right? So try to keep this thing early versus late. पहला. Now, if it becomes early, either you talk to that engineer कि यार ये सही नहीं लग रहा है, या पूछ लिया context, या ऐसा सोचा है क्या कभी, वैसा वाला part, and वो नहीं मानता है, then there is no way, ऊपर जाके नीचे आओ. Speak to your manager and let your manager speak to engineering manager, and then let it percolate. It's not a complaint. It's more about you putting forth a critical question ahead, so that it is overall better for the product. So in some cases, it is okay to go up and down. ऊपर जाके मैनेजर को बोला, उससे बात कर ले, क्योंकि because your manager, at least your manager would have that context, right? So your manager becomes your best friend in that case. That hey, I'm thinking of bouncing this idea. If you're aligned, let's do it together, because I don't want it to come out awkward. कि मैं चढ़ रहा हूँ इनको. Because a manager being an experienced person will have a very calm and composed attitude towards the situation. Even he or she would have seen it much worse than, right? तो ये चीज ध्यान रखना. So extra effort you definitely need to put in. You do soft commits if okay, so that engineer can at least start working, because कोई एक immediately 2 घंटे में चालू नहीं कर रहा है. But when you realize it's wrong, try to realize it slightly early versus late, क्योंकि जितना late होगा उतना फिर वो change नहीं करेगा, and then फिर झगड़ा होगा, right? So if you look at the theme of my answers, मैं झगड़े नहीं करता हूँ, मैं वो avoid करता हूँ. नहीं चाहिए. I hate awkward conversation. I hate when that happens. Obviously, it is something which is unavoidable, but I try to minimize such conversations that happen. So little bit of effort from our side would minimize sort of that. And the last brahmastra, ऊपर जाके नीचे आ. So involve your mind.
Right. I had just one more question, if someone you permit me. So the second question that I had is again related to this one, is that because of course it is a technical field and things are changing rapidly all the time, right? There are massive improvements in systems, and you always have to remain ahead of the curve. For a PM, how does he or she sort of how can he be in the race to be ahead of the curve all the time, especially in a space which he is not specialized in? Now, engineers can do that. It's a space they may go on, reading about it, getting deep into it. But for PM, how does he sort of get into that space and try to continuously improve and be ahead?
I have slightly different opinion of this. You don't need to be always ahead. मेरा ऐसा है because you cannot, because otherwise you are in this endless loop of learning something जो तुम कभी नहीं, like you would not be able to do justice to it. So in some cases it is always better let engineers do it and you piggyback. You just be the unbiased ear that they always wanted to you have, right? मैं वो एंगल से देखूंगा, because हर चीज जानना, and again with time you will build context. And again, if you look carefully, like people would not believe like React as a framework came in 2013, got popularized in 2015, and 2023 में गायब भी हो गया. Like now no one's writing React, right? GraphQL came in 2013, had hype in 2017, 2019 पे गायब भी हो गया, right? Things change so rapidly that तुम आज ये सीखने बैठोगे, कल दूसरा आ जाएगा. अभी AI का तो छोड़ो, AI पे तो बात भी नहीं करता, मैं तो नॉर्मल बेसिक चीजों पे बोलूंगा, उधर भी हालत खराब. And with this in thing, you need to understand कि हर चीज नहीं कर सकते. So if you can have, again, if you have the right camaraderie with people, you can piggyback, and with your, मतलब ये like you don't need deep expertise. Over time you would build it. Number one, because even the engineers or the team that you're working on, they are also in the same position. ऐसा थोड़ी ना कि तुम्हारे मैनेजर को सब आता नहीं आता ना, वो भी तो सीख ही रहा है. And that's the challenge of being part of a knowledge workforce.
Yeah.
दिमाग बहुत ज्यादा, right? So which is where we need to understand that when can we piggyback to continue the momentum and along the way. हर बार आगे जाने की कोशिश करने में ना अपने भी प्रेशर आता है बेफालतू का. And again, like for example, to give a very concrete example, I know nothing about AI or data science. मेरा maths बहुत strong है. If I want to do it, I would be able to make a decent impact in it. But am I choosing to do it? No. We need to know which battles to fight. Although I can have a very solid conversation with anyone in the AI field कि होता कैसा है. मैं मेरे foundational concepts, primitive thinking, first principles, वो लगा के I would be able to have that conversation. Right? But am I the master in the field? Definitely not. And I need to know कि मैं master नहीं हूँ, तो मैं ज्यादा नहीं बोलूंगा. जितने मेरे basic चीजों से मैं understand कर सकता हूँ उतना करूंगा. At some places I would do yes. I don't, because again, let's say part. You need to know your limitation. ये मेरी strength है, मेरी limitations है. I choose not to fight that battle. I choose to lose that battle because I saw a high upside on other part. मेरा बाकी part तो strong है क्योंकि तुम engineering भी करोगे, product भी होगा, ये भी पता कर रहे हैं. नहीं ये possible. सबके पास same amount of, सबके पास 8-10 घंटे दिन के करने, right? So I would do that. And again, if you are sustaining in that same domain for a long time, you would automatically build that expertise. So that's what my take is on.
I would just add
Thank you so much.
two more points to this conversation, just for your context. I think one of the things, the first thing that you have to understand in systems thinking, every node has a different behavior, right? And they are better at their own behavior. So it is the collective system which has to evolve or grow, right? So even piggybacking on someone else because of their node behavior is different is the fact that you're building a deep relationship in between, where you're saying that, okay, this person does the job very well. Like अगर मैं कल को कोई प्रोडक्ट बना रहा हूँ और मेरे साथ काम कर रहा है तो मैं इंजीनियरिंग छोड़ दूंगा, सही बात है, मैं उसको अलग लेंस से बात कर दूंगा. ये पहली चीज. दूसरी चीज, एक और गलत फहमी काफी लोगों की होती है कि जनरलिस्ट का मतलब होता है टू मेनी थिंग्स डूइंग इट, कि टू मेनी थिंग्स तुम कर सकते हो एक दिन में. नहीं, टू मेनी थिंग्स विद अ सर्टेन लेवल ऑफ एफिशिएंसी, दैट इज व्हाट मेक्स यू अ ग्रेट जनरलिस्ट. कि अगर मैं आज डिजाइन कर रहा हूँ और डिजाइन में बहुत अच्छा हूँ, 99.9 हूं मैं, मान लो, तो अगर मैं सेल्स कर रहा हूँ और अगर मैं जेन्युइनली वो टास्क उठा रहा हूँ, उसकी अकाउंटेबिलिटी ले रहा हूँ, तो मुझे उतना अच्छा होना पड़ेगा उस चीज में. देन ओनली आई कैन से दैट आई कैन मूव फ्रॉम वन टास्क टू अनदर टास्क. लॉट ऑफ पीपल जंप फ्रॉम वन प्लेस टू अनदर प्लेस saying that they do three things together and never do anything, end up doing anything. Awesome. ठीक है. I will just call Arpit. We will take 7-8 more minutes. That's all. ठीक है. Somi, I am bringing you in the spotlight. Right. Yes. Somi, go for it.
Thank you, Shravan. Hey Arpit, thank you for giving us your time. तो आपकी एक लाइन से एक्चुअली मैं बहुत रिलेट कर पाई that I'm also a very hard working person. मैं श्रवण से हमेशा ये बात करती हूँ, like you know, I'm a slow learner, but मैं बहुत hard work, like I can put in so much efforts in the things. But you know, मैं अपने 8 years के करियर में थोड़े established कंपनी के साथ काम कर रही हूँ, like Electronic Arts, Thomson Reuters, और some of the things which I feel I'm missing is, you know, the kind of impact or the visibility of your impact you get in the startup versus in the you know well established company. क्योंकि आपने दोनों में काम करा है, तो you'll have a better answer for this. Do you seriously think like you know the kind of work we do, or maybe like when I'm saying I'm a hard working person, मैं काम कर सकती हूँ, like can stretch my hours and get the things done and all. Startups में उसकी ज्यादा visibility और you know रिस्पेक्ट होगा देन अ वेल एस्टैब्लिश्ड कंपनी जहां आपके पास हर एक प्रोसेस के लिए 3-4 बंदे तो हैं ही, एंड इट्स अ टीम एफर्ट करके लाइक यू नो वैसा हो जाता है. डू यू थिंक दिस हैपेंस, लाइक एम आई लैगिंग समथिंग, बिकॉज दिस इज व्हाट आई फील आफ्टर 8 years की मैं वो मिस कर दी. मे बी यू नो मैं शायद 2x की स्पीड से ग्रो कर सकती थी अगर मैं अपने करियर में एक बार तो भी किसी स्टार्टअप के साथ काम करती, एंड आई वुड हैव पुट इन द सेम काइंड ऑफ एफर्ट्स व्हिच आई पुट इन द कंपनी नाउ.
गुड, ग्रेट क्वेश्चन. एक चीज इस पे ऐड करता हूं मैं. हार्ड वर्क इज अ स्केलर क्वांटिटी. लगाते जाओ. इट डज नॉट मैटर. यू नीड टू गिव इट द राइट डायरेक्शन. नीड टू पुट एफर्ट इन द राइट डायरेक्शन, राइट? मेक इट अ वेक्टर क्वांटिटी कि तुम किस डायरेक्शन में एफर्ट डाल रही, राइट? दैट इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट है, ठीक है. नाउ देयर आर सम थिंग्स लाइक स्टार्टअप्स में एडवांटेज होता है बिकॉज यू मूव फास्ट, यू गेट बेटर प्रोजेक्ट्स बिकॉज यू डोंट स्पेंड अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम डूइंग वन प्रोजेक्ट, राइट. बड़े कंपनी में वो अलग है, बट देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु वर्क आउट इवन इन स्टार्टअप्स विदाउट गेटिंग एनी विजिबिलिटी. वेरी हाई चांस. मैंने बहुत सारे लोगों को देखा बहुत काम करते हैं बट इम्पैक्ट नहीं लाते. नाउ व्हिच इज वेयर आई ऑलवेज से दिस बिजनेस प्रोडक्ट इंजीनियरिंग, ये वाला एंगल हमेशा ध्यान रखना है कि हाउ मच आर यू क्रिएटिंग, लाइक व्हाट इज द डेफिनेशन ऑफ इम्पैक्ट फॉर दिस प्रोजेक्ट. इज दिस प्रोजेक्ट अ हाई विजिबिलिटी प्रोजेक्ट? इफ यस तो मैं एफर्ट डालू, इफ नॉट तो मैं कम एफर्ट डालू. नाउ व्हेन यू से विजिबिलिटी, विजिबिलिटी दो तरह की, एक इम्पैक्ट वाली विजिबिलिटी होती है और एक सिर्फ नाम की विजिबिलिटी होती है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल ये ऐसे लोग नहीं होते जैसे यूट्यूबर्स होते हैं जो बहुत सारा अच्छा कंटेंट डालते हैं, बट बिल्कुल फॉर एग्जाम्पल बेस्ट एग्जाम्पल इज यशराज मुखाटे. इतना अच्छा कंटेंट डाला था उसने, किसी ने नहीं देखा, बट देन एक वो रसोड़े वाला वीडियो वायरल गया एंड एवरीथिंग टुक ऑफ, राइट. नाउ इफ आई टेक दैट एज एन एग्जांपल, तुमने बहुत अच्छा काम किया बट तुम्हारे पास विजिबिलिटी नहीं है, इम्पैक्ट थोड़ा बहुत हो रहा था बट विजिबिलिटी नहीं, बट देन एक ऐसा प्रोजेक्ट आएगा जो फोड़ने पे तुम्हारा बाकी सब चल पड़ेगा. नाउ आई गिव एन एग्जांपल ऑफ दैट. जैसे a lot of, जैसे there are some compliances that every company needs to adhere to, especially when they want to operate out of European, basically European countries called the GDPR. GDPR किसी को नहीं करना होता, मतलब कंपनीज को करना होता है बट किसी इंजीनियर को नहीं करना. क्यों? क्योंकि बोरिंग काम, क्योंकि दो तीन दिन क्लिक करने हैं, लोगों से काम करवाना है, दिस एंड दैट. इट्स वे टू बोरिंग, वेरी टीडियस, बट लोग करते नहीं. मैंने अनअकैडमी में GDPR ड्राइव किया था, मैंने गूगल में GDPR ड्राइव. व्हाई? क्योंकि काम का तो इम्पैक्ट था, बट जो सारे लोगों में नाम पता चले वो कहां से आएगा? वो कभी कभी ना बोरिंग वर्क से आता है. जैसे गूगल जब मैं छोड़ रहा था, मेरा लास्ट प्रोजेक्ट वाज टू ड्राइव GDPR का प्लान्स फॉर गूगल. तो उसके वजह से क्या हुआ ना, मेरे को मेरी सब ऑर्गेनाइजेशन का हर टीम मेंबर जानने लगे. तो मेरे, और क्योंकि रीसेंसी बायस था, अरे अर्पित तू जा रहा है, अरे सैड टू सी यू को सबके आईएमएस रीसेंसी बायस, बट उससे मेरे को इम्पैक्ट नहीं है. इम्पैक्ट रेवेन्यू में है वगैरह, बट इट इज नॉट समथिंग कि मैं टेक्निकली बोस्ट कर पाऊंगा. बट उससे क्या हुआ, मेरे को जो विजिबिलिटी चाहिए थी वो मिली, पहला. दूसरा, वो विजिबिलिटी की वजह से मेरा पुराना इम्पैक्ट लोगों को पता चला, इससे तो ये किया था, इससे तो ये किया था, राइट. सो आइडेंटिफाई दोस थिंग्स, लाइक फॉर एवरी प्रोजेक्ट दैट यू पिक अप, आइडेंटिफाई कि ये इम्पैक्ट वाला है, शेयर इम्पैक्ट से विजिबिलिटी आएगी, या मुझे रॉ विजिबिलिटी चाहिए इसके ऊपर कि ये प्रोजेक्ट ऐसा है कि इजी टू डू है, मंडे ने कोई पिक नहीं कर रहा बट इससे मुझे विजिबिलिटी मिले, राइट. दैट इज व्हाई. नाउ विद रिस्पेक्ट टू शेयर इम्पैक्ट, अब हर किसी को इम्पैक्टफुल प्रोजेक्ट चाहिए, सबको चाहिए ना, बट होते तो है नहीं. कंपनी में 10 में से एक प्रोजेक्ट इम्पैक्ट वाला होता है, बट ऐसा नहीं कि बाकी सारे प्रोजेक्ट खराब होते. इट्स अबाउट हाउ यू, अगेन क्रिएटिविटी, हाउ यू फॉर्मुलेट इट इनटू मेकिंग इट साउंड इम्पैक्टफुल. मैंने ये किया. जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल प्रैक्टो में आई यूज्ड टू बी, आई वाज अ प्लेटफॉर्म इंजीनियर. मैं इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर संभालता था, स्टेजिंग का, प्रोडक्शन भी नहीं, मैं स्टेजिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ओन करता था. बट मैंने इम्पैक्ट कैसे दिखा, आई विल गिव अ वेरी कंक्रीट एग्जांपल ऑफ दिस. कि मैंने स्टेजिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर क्रिएट करने का टाइम आई चॉप इट डाउन फ्रॉम 10 मिनट्स टू 5 मिनट्स. ठीक है. अब क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है, प्रोडक्ट से थोड़ी ना चेंज किया है, यूजर को थोड़ी ना, रेवेन्यू थोड़ी ना इम्पैक्ट है, बट द वे आई क्वांटिफाइड इट वाज, मैंने हर डेवलपर का हर स्टेजिंग इंस्टेंस क्रिएट करने का 5 मिनट का टाइम कम किया. दिन में एक डेवलपर 2 स्टेजिंग इंस्टेंस ऑन एन एवरेज क्रिएट करता. 200 डेवलपर्स थे, तो मैंने 200 डेवलपर का पर डे का 5 मिनट टाइम सेव किया. तो मैंने 1000 मिनट टाइम सेव किया पर डे. 5 वर्किंग डे है तो 5000 टाइम, मतलब बेसिकली 5000 मिनट सेव किए. 5000 मिनट सेव किए फॉर दिस. अब मल्टीप्लाई करो एवरेज सैलरी से, मिल गया ना इम्पैक्ट कि कितना निकला, राइट. एंड दिस इज अ वेरी सिंपल थिंग कि अब ये मैंने कहां डाला, मैं अभी तो बोल रहा हूँ, बट ये लिटरली मैंने डाला था मेरे एनुअल रिव्यू, जिससे मेरा प्रमोशन हुआ. बिकॉज इट वाज समथिंग, मतलब आई वाज नॉट जस्ट समवन हु वाज जस्ट हैंड्स फॉर द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, ये कर रहा है. आई वाज आल्सो द ब्रेन्स फॉर द ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हु नोज हाउ टू फाइंड कि मैंने ये जो काम किया है, ये दिस इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट बोरिंग वर्क दैट समवन हैज टू डू. स्टेजिंग इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बढ़ाना, कम करना, थोड़ा सा ऑप्टिमाइज कर देगा, क्या ही फर्क पड़ेगा, 10 मिनट का 5 मिनट लग गए. बट द वे आई पुट इट मेड इट वेरी क्लियर. और यही चीज मैंने सबको ईमेल पे भी डाली थी बाद में कि ये किया, ये इम्पैक्ट था, इससे हमने इतना इम्पैक्ट आया है. सडनली सब लोग कैसा, ये काम पे से ये कैसे निकाल. एंड अगेन दैट इज क्रिएटिव कि तुम अपने काम का कैसा इम्पैक्ट निकालते हो. क्योंकि अगेन एक ही प्रोजेक्ट होगा जो एकदम हाई फंडू रॉ शेयर इम्पैक्ट वाला प्रोजेक्ट होगा, बट आउट ऑफ द, एंड अगेन एवरीबॉडी फॉलोज द नॉर्मल का. टेल एंड पे हो गए, बाकी टेल एंड पे ओके प्रोजेक्ट हो गए, बहुत सारे एवरेज लेवल प्रोजेक्ट हो गए, 1-2 हाई इम्पैक्ट हो गए. जिसको ये मिला उसका ठीक, बट जो यहाँ पे है ना, उनको कुछ तो करना पड़ेगा. तो बी क्रिएटिव इन फिगरिंग इट आउट. और जो यहाँ पे है, दे आर ईदर अनलकी और ड्यू टू एनी रीजन बिकॉज ऑफ द पास्ट इम्पैक्ट दे डिड नॉट गेट इट. नाउ दे नीड टू वर्क विद द मैनेजर कि क्यों उन्हें ये प्रोजेक्ट नहीं मिले, वेयर आर दे लैकिंग एंड हाउ दे कैन मूव फ्रॉम दिस टू दिस इवेंचुअली टू. सो वहां पे फिर मैनेजर के साथ समझना, समझाना, ईगो पे ना लेना, वो सारा पार्ट.
Awesome. Last
Nice, very nice, sir.
last
Thank you.
question, Sukanya, can you show your screen, I will put you in the spotlight.
Yes, yes.
Yes, I'll do that. So Sukanya is a software developer, Arpit, so probably your
Easy.
fan. Yes.
I'm working as software engineer with Juniper Networks for 8+ years now. So I know Arpit from his LinkedIn profile from many years. So I have been your fan. Thanks, Arpit, for coming, and thanks, Shravan, for giving us this opportunity. So, as we all know about your passion for engineering, and now also you were explaining that. So, when you are about to start a company, it doesn't only involve your engineering knowledge; it involves from A to Z, from product management to sales to everything. So, will your focus and passion not get affected?
It would 100%, but which is why I'm not the CEO but the CTO. Number one, that I'm still operating out of my strength. It does not mean I would not look at sales and marketing and product, because I, as a CTO, it's mostly CTPO in most cases. So I would still have to look at product. So which is where I tested the waters first. For example, running my course is an art of sales. Building a social brand is an art of marketing, right? Being on a stage, speaking with confidence. ये क्या कर आ गया. Basically, I've tested the waters. That ऐसा नहीं है कि रातों रात उठ के वाला आप कंपनी खोले. Right? Again, as I said, that after a certain age, especially post 30, you cannot take risky bets with spouse and families and all, right? So risky bets नहीं ले सकते आसान. So I had to ensure that I'm moving in a space which is where even if I lose, it would not be something that I would be losing it all. Okay. But again, because it is going to be challenging, I am up for challenge, very close to my internal locus of identity, that my hard work would help me get where we have to be. So again, in my comfort zone. Where I would go out of my comfort zone is risk. Salary नहीं आने वाली 2-3 साल तक, क्या आएगा, कुछ आएगा, product चलेगा, नहीं चलेगा. I would have to go back to job and whatnot. That would be there. But I accounted for all of them. That risk factor is there. But is it the risk worth taking? I guess so. Right? Now, passion of engineering getting affected because of this, I would, given the person I am, I know वो कभी नहीं होने वाला, because if I'm writing on LinkedIn for 8 years now, अब वो आदत नहीं जाएगी ना, अब वो नहीं जाएगी. अब मेरे को रोज सुबह उठ के चुन मस्ती की क्या पढ़ना पड़े. And again, that has helped me be on track with constant learning. That implicit public commitment that I've made कि मैं रोज 2 posts डालूंगा, and again it has to revolve around anything engineering, no nonsense part. It helped me be on track to keep learning new stuff. So it's a two-way relationship. लोगों का फायदा होता और मेरे को उसके वजह से मेरे को सीखना पड़ता. So in either way I win. So which is why when I answered the 3 or 4 questions back, I started with saying कि मैं selfish हूँ इस मामले में. That I never post something that I already know. I post something that I recently learned and would share. तो उससे क्या होता है ना, I keep growing. And as a CTO, आज ये challenge आएगा, कल दूसरा challenge आएगा, उसमें से कुछ नया सीखूंगा, वो डाल दूंगा. So that does not get up. So I try to minimize that. And again, वो पूरा calculations थे मेरे दिमाग में. That LinkedIn post करना बंद नहीं करना है, YouTube बंद नहीं करना है. आज ये YouTube का पूरा, ये हफ्ते का YouTube का किया, अभी कल रिकॉर्ड करूँ, कल परसों रिकॉर्ड करूँ. कल बिल्डिंग में कराटे क्लास चलते तो बच्चे चिल्लाते वो टाइम, तो रिकॉर्ड नहीं कर सकता. अभी परसों रिकॉर्ड करूंगा. तो वो करते रहो, चलते जाएगा. तो मेरा वही आगे दैट लोकस ऑफ आइडेंटिटी की मेरे को वो कैलकुलेशंस के साथ, although it's a risk, but is the risk worth taking? Will I be losing a lot? But again, not letting it affect it. तो वो पूरा करके रख. ये नहीं तो कोई और चले जाएगा ना. मे बी डेटाबेस इंटरनल्स ना करूं, जो मैं यहाँ पे कर रहा हूँ उस पर से कुछ नया मिले, कुछ तो given the uncertainty and ambiguity of the problem statement, I would definitely be touching upon something unexpected. कुछ तो रैंडम से आएगा, कुछ आएगा, सीखता तो चलते रहेगा.
Awesome. So the last thing that I want to kind of say, Arpit, is that even before we have this ritual of taking a photo, but even before that, what I want to kind of say is there are a lot of things that I personally took away, and I think it's some kind of validation for myself also, because मैं भी इसी तरह काफी चीजों में सोचता हूँ कि how do you build better systems, how do you think about things, and I think ये जर्नी काफी सिमिलर और मेरे लिए बहुत वैलिडेटिंग जर्नी है, coming from someone who I deeply admire. ठीक है, तो उसके बाद मैं एक फोटो, हमारा एक छोटा सा यहाँ पे सेशन का, लेट्स गाइस प्लीज शोकेस. अब यार अब तो शक्ल दिखा दो यार. तब तक तो हम ही दिख रहे थे, अब तो तुम्हारी शक्लें दिखनी चाहिए. I want everyone to showcase your faces. Please do that. Yes, please. Apologies. So at 1, 2, 3, we'll take a photograph. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Awesome. एक और चीज यार, Arpit, once again, I am so glad that you came. I think this has been a super lovely session, and I think कहीं ना कहीं इनके दिमाग में भी बहुत सारी चीजें reinforce हो गई. The art of resilience, how to be resilient in the face of adversity, probably building better relationships, thinking first principally, looking at better ways at systems better, right? How do you do better discovery? I think बहुत सारी चीजें सीखी. Once again, thank you very much, भाई. It means so much. It means the world to me. Thank you very much.
Anytime, Shravan. Thanks for having me. Thanks so much, folks.
और
more
एक बात
questions.
आज मैं चाहता हूँ जनता, whatever you learned from this, टैग अर्पित, इसके 5,000 फॉलोअर बढ़ा दो आज। जो सीखा मेरे को नहीं पता, कैसे भी करो 5,000 फॉलोअर बढ़ाओ। फिर मैं पैसे नहीं लिए उसने मेरे से, मैं बता रहा हूँ, तो कुछ तो वापिस दूंगा ना।
अच्छा, मिलते हैं क्या?
चल ठीक है भाई,
चेक
गॉड ब्लेस यू।